Atlantic City, Easter Sunday, 1972. A nightclub, music, people celebrating. The kind of night where nobody is thinking about consequences. Then the shooting starts. When it's over, 5 people are dead. 26 are wounded. The carnage is so complete and so sudden that law enforcement spends the next weeks tracking down 799 potential witnesses. Not one of them comes forward. Not one. The man shot dead in the middle of all of it is Tyrone Palmer, known on the streets as Millionaire, Frank Matthews' main dealer in Philadelphia, the man who controlled the entire Philadelphia operation for the biggest black drug empire in American history. Gone. Frank Matthews gets the news. He is already deep in his own supply by this point. The cocaine that made him his fortune is now running through him constantly. The people closest to him can see it, the paranoia cycling with the invincibility. Up 1 hour, certain something is closing in the next. The sense of godlike mastery that cocaine gives men who already have real power, making them feel untouchable when the walls are actually starting to move. He dropped his own product in a parking lot around this time. A detective watching him saw Matthews searching all around his car like he'd lost something. The detective checked the area after Matthews drove away and found an ounce of white powder in aluminum foil on the ground. The most powerful black drug trafficker in American history was losing track of his own supply. And now, Millionaire is dead. The Philadelphia operation is bleeding, and in the months that follow, 3 more of his top lieutenants are murdered by the Black Mafia. He can feel it. Too many bodies, too much noise, too much attention landing on an organization that had operated invisible for years. What he doesn't know yet is that the DEA wire on his phone is already running. What he doesn't know yet is that his neighbor in Brooklyn has been watching his driveway for months. What he doesn't know yet is that the night everything changes for Frank Matthews is already in motion. This is that story. He was born February 13th, 1944 in Durham, North Carolina. His mother died when he was 4, and he was raised by his aunt. He dropped out of school in the 7th grade and spent time in reform school. Philadelphia came next, and then New York with nothing. He started in a barber shop, running numbers. By 1972, the IRS calculated that he had earned $10 million that year alone. He operated across 21 states in every major East Coast city. He ran 2 fortified drug mills in Brooklyn, the Ponderosa at 925 Prospect Place and the OK Corral at 101 East 56th Street. The walls were reinforced with steel and concrete, and guards with automatic weapons stood at the doors. He paid stewardesses $1,000 a month each to smuggle heroin in their flight bags to airport lockers across the country. His dealers picked up the bags after the flights landed. He used the airline industry as his personal delivery service. He organized the Atlanta Summit in 1971, the most significant gathering of black and Hispanic drug traffickers in American history. Men flew in from across the country to sit in the same room and discuss how to build supply lines without mafia involvement. The DEA photographed everyone who attended. A dealer who once visited his New York home described opening a closet to put away a payment. The closet was packed to eye level with stacks of cash. Not a safe, a closet, like most men keep their coats. His mansion on Staten Island sat on the most exclusive street in the borough, directly across from Gambino crime boss Paul Castellano and a man known as 3-Finger Brown. This was the same Italian mob that had refused to do business with him when he first arrived in New York. Now, they were his neighbors, and he had gotten there by doing something no black man had ever done before. The Italian mob controlled the heroin supply chain in America through one pipeline. They called it the French Connection. Morphine base was smuggled from Turkey and refined into 98% pure heroin in laboratories in Marseille, France, operated by Corsican organized crime networks. The product was loaded onto ships and sent to New York, where it was received by the Italian mafia, taxed at every level, and distributed into black neighborhoods across the country. By the early 1970s, 80% of all heroin consumed in the United States was coming through that one pipeline. And here is the detail that explains why the CIA eventually inserted itself into the Frank Matthews investigation. The Corsican networks that ran those Marseille laboratories, the ones producing the heroin, had been protected by the CIA after World War II. The United States government needed someone to control the docks in Marseille to prevent French communists from organizing the port workers and shutting down American supply lines into Europe. They made a deal with the Corsicans, political cover and protection, in exchange for keeping the communists out of the port. The CIA made a deal with the men who would spend the next 3 decades flooding American streets with heroin. Frank Matthews looked at that pipeline, looked at the Italians sitting in the middle of it, taxing every kilo that passed through, and went around them entirely. Through Raymond Marquez, he met a Cuban dealer named Roland Gonzalez. Gonzalez had direct connections to suppliers in Venezuela and South America. When Gonzalez fled to Venezuela in 1969 to avoid a drug charge, he helped set Matthews up with direct supply lines through Corsican intermediaries, bypassing the Italian middlemen completely. Frank Matthews became the first and only black crime boss to establish direct ties to the French Connection heroin pipeline, not through the Italians, but around them. The product he moved was coming from the same Corsican networks the CIA had protected after World War II, which meant the CIA had a very specific reason to understand exactly what Frank Matthews knew, who his contacts were, and what he might say if he ever sat down across from a federal prosecutor and started talking. That interest would follow him all the way to his disappearance. June 1972. There is an NYPD detective who lives in Frank Matthews' Brooklyn neighborhood. He notices things. He watches Matthews pull out of his driveway in luxury cars, day after day. He watches men arrive carrying paper bags at all hours of the night. He runs the license plates of the vehicles parked outside. Some of those plates come back tied to known drug dealers. Nothing solid, but the detective keeps watching. And in June of 1972, police received permission to tap Frank Matthews' phone lines, the most careful drug trafficker in American history. A wire on his line. He does not know. He keeps operating. He keeps talking. The cocaine makes him more confident than he should be, and the paranoia that should sharpen his discipline is cycling too fast to be useful. He is simultaneously certain something is wrong and certain he is untouchable. He cannot see clearly enough to understand that both feelings are true. Something is wrong, and he is about to become very touchable. Las Vegas, January 1973, McCarran International Airport. Frank Matthews is at the terminal with Cheryl Denise Brown, his girlfriend. She turned heads in every room she entered. Not his wife, his girlfriend, the one he chose. DEA agents converge from 2 directions simultaneously. They arrest him on charges of tax evasion and conspiracy to distribute heroin and cocaine. He is extradited to New York to the West Street Detention Center in Manhattan. From his cell, he keeps running the operation. His top lieutenants visit. His lawyer, Gino Galena, comes repeatedly. Sources inside the facility report that Matthews appears to be giving instructions and orders, running his empire from behind bars, the way powerful men always do when walls try to contain them. The bail hearing happens. $5 million, the highest bail in United States history at that time. He agrees not to fight extradition. Bail drops to $2.5 million, then drops again to $325,000. He posts it. He walks out. On the courthouse steps, an IRS agent is waiting. The agent informs Frank Matthews right there in public on the courthouse steps that he owes back taxes on $100 million he earned in 1971 alone. $100 million in back taxes from 1 year. Matthews puts on his sunglasses and walks to his car. The prosecutor, Ray Deary, watches him do it and says afterward Frank looked and acted like the king of New York City. He walked around our turf like he owned it. Even facing 50 years in federal prison, Frank Matthews moved like a king. But the clock was running. April 1973. Frank Matthews is out on bail. His trial date is set. A Genovese family associate named Ernie Coraluzzo contacts him. He has 40 kilograms of heroin. He wants $375,000. They meet at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City, one of the most famous hotels in the world. Matthews delivers the money through an intermediary the following day. Coraluzzo takes the money and flees to the Bahamas. No heroin, no refund, just gone with $375,000 of Frank Matthews's money in his pocket. Matthews's response is immediate. His crew locates James Capotorto, known as Big Jimmy, a Genovese underling and Coraluzzo's personal bodyguard. They kidnap him. He becomes leverage in the effort to recover the stolen money. So now, on top of a federal trial, a DEA wiretap that has been recording for months, 3 murdered lieutenants, his Philadelphia operation destroyed, his own cocaine use eating at his judgment, Frank Matthews is in an active confrontation with the Genovese crime family. The same family that, according to former DEA agent Frank Panessa, would later be the subject of unconfirmed government reports suggesting they had lured Matthews to the Bahamas and killed him before he could become a government witness. Whether that is what happened, nobody knows. But in the spring of 1973, Frank Matthews was surrounded, the government closing in from one direction, the Genovese family from another, his own organization bleeding, and his own supply running through his veins, making it harder to think. Here is what Frank Matthews is sitting with in the weeks before July 2nd, 1973. 6 federal counts: tax evasion, conspiracy, 50 years maximum sentence. A case built partly on conversations recorded through the wire on his own phone. 3 murdered lieutenants. His main Philadelphia dealer shot dead on Easter Sunday. 799 witnesses who said nothing because they knew what happened to people who talked. A Genovese crew with a grievance and $375,000 of his money. A CIA that had documented reasons to be interested in what he knew about their protected Corsican networks, and $20 million in cash sitting in safety deposit boxes, money nobody had found, money nobody could seize. On one side, Cheryl Denise Brown, willing to go wherever he went. On the other side, Barbara Hinton, his common-law wife, 3 sons, the Staten Island mansion, a woman who had been beside him through every year of his rise. He had to choose. But here is the calculation that nobody talks about. There was no version of what came next that did not destroy his family. If he stayed, 50 years in federal prison. His sons grow up visiting their father behind glass. Barbara raises 3 boys alone. If he ran, his sons grow up without a father entirely. No visits, no phone calls, no explanation they can give anyone. just absence, total and permanent. Both choices meant the same thing for those three boys. He picked the one where he was free. Brooklyn Federal Courthouse, July 2nd, 1973. The summer heat is heavy enough to feel on your skin. Electric fans are turning slowly in the courtroom. The judge is there. The federal prosecutors are there. The defense team is there. Frank Matthews does not come through the door. An hour, 2 hours. The realization settles over that courtroom the way the summer heat settles. Slowly, heavily, finally. He is gone. He had emptied his safety deposit boxes. He had collected Cheryl Denise Brown. He had taken an estimated $20 million in cash. A friend reported seeing them board a flight to Houston. 1 month after his disappearance, IRS agents, acting on a tip, rushed to a bank in North Carolina. The bank manager looks up at them. She says, "Oh, you just missed him." No trace of Frank Matthews is found anywhere after that. The FBI posts a $20,000 bounty, the highest since the one offered for Depression-era bank robber John Dillinger. The manhunt involves the DEA, the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, and Interpol's. Alleged sightings in more than 50 countries: Venezuela, the Bahamas, France, Italy, Hong Kong, Africa. Everyone investigated, none confirmed. While the government hunted Frank Matthews across 50 countries, they also turned to the woman he left behind, Barbara Hinton. Federal agents came to her door. Prosecutors summoned her before a grand jury. They offered her cooperation deals, legal protection, every incentive a government could offer a woman whose husband had vanished and left her alone with 3 children. She gave them nothing. Every grand jury appearance, every offer, every threat, nothing. She raised 3 sons in that silence, 3 boys who grew up without their father, without an explanation, without knowing whether the man who built a 21-state empire and walked away from all of it was alive somewhere or dead in the Bahamas. The documentary filmmakers who spent years investigating this case interviewed law enforcement agents who worked it for decades. What they came away believing, reading between the lines of those interviews, was that Matthews had made it out, had left the country, lived abroad until the early to mid-1980s, then came back, blended in somewhere in America under a name nobody knows. His sons believe he is alive, or was until recently. He would be over 80 years old today. They have never received confirmation either way. No body, no death certificate, no deathbed confession, no photograph of an old man somewhere who looks like the young man from Durham, who built an empire from a barber shop and walked away from all of it before the walls could close. Just silence.